My name is Lillian Nelson. I'm 32, and until 3 days ago, I thought my life with Daniel was perfect. I've been an emergency nurse for nearly a decade, thriving in chaos, yet always craving the stability I thought I had at home. Daniel, my boyfriend of 4 years, was the quiet, dependable type, a software engineer with a soft smile and the kind of patience that made me feel safe. We lived together in a 2-bedroom apartment in Seattle, our lives intertwined in routines that felt effortless. Cooking dinner together on weeknights, binge-watching old shows on the weekends, and sharing bills like a well-oiled machine. I've always been careful with money. My investment account was separate, a fortress built from years of careful savings. But our joint account? That was our future fund. A home, maybe a family someday, a dream we were building together. It was a tangible symbol of our trust, something I never thought would betray me. Daniel had an ex-girlfriend, Vanessa, someone he dated briefly during college. He mentioned her once in a while, usually in nostalgic tones, nothing more. I had never met her in person, and honestly, I never felt threatened. She was just a name in his past. That should have stayed true. 3 nights ago, on a Thursday evening, I came home after a grueling 14-hour shift. Seattle was draped in its usual gray drizzle, the city lights shimmering off wet streets. Daniel was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for pasta with chicken, our standard weeknight meal. He looked up and smiled, but something in his expression was off, subtle enough to go unnoticed if I hadn't been watching for it. His phone buzzed on the counter. He glanced at it, and for a fraction of a second his face flickered with something, a shadow I couldn't quite place. "Everything okay?" I asked, setting my bag down. "Yeah, fine," he said too quickly. "Just Vanessa." I froze mid-step. Vanessa? His ex? "Vanessa reached out a few days ago," he continued, chopping vegetables like nothing was amiss. "She's going through a rough patch, lost her job, behind on rent. She asked if I knew anyone hiring." I nodded, swallowing the unease tightening in my chest. "That's tough for her. Did you have any leads?" "Not really," he said. "I've been trying to help where I can." Something in the casual way he said it made my stomach twist, but I let it go. We finished dinner, laughed at a scene in a sitcom, and went to bed. Normal night, or so I thought. The next morning, Friday, I woke up exhausted from my shift. Daniel was already up, dressed, unusually alert. "You're up early," I said, blinking against the sunlight streaming through the blinds. "Meeting someone for coffee before work," he replied casually. "Who?" I asked, masking the edge in my voice. "Vanessa," he said, hesitation barely noticeable. "She wanted to talk about job prospects. I know someone at an agency that might be hiring." I nodded, keeping my voice calm. "Okay." He left before I did, leaving a pit of unease in my stomach. Why meet her in person? Why not just an email introduction? I pushed the thoughts aside, telling myself I was overthinking it. That weekend, he was glued to his phone, texting and smiling at the screen, a secretive energy I hadn't noticed before. When I asked, he waved it off as work-related messages. I trusted him. That was my first mistake. Monday evening came, quiet and ordinary. I sat on the couch, paying bills online, glancing at our joint savings account, the lifeline of our future plans. The screen loaded, and my heart stopped. $10,000 was gone. I refreshed. No error. The transfer had been made Saturday morning to an account I didn't recognize. My hands shook as I stared at the screen, the apartment suddenly suffocating, the walls pressing in. I called Daniel immediately. "Hey, babe," he said cheerfully, voices of colleagues in the background. "Can you come home? We need to talk," I said, forcing calm over the storm inside me. 20 minutes later, he walked in, smiling. I had the laptop open, the missing funds glaring at him from the screen. "What's going on?" he asked, setting his bag down, casual. I turned the laptop toward him. "Want to explain this?" He blinked, pale, then flushed. "Oh, yeah, I was going to tell you." "Tell me what? That you took $10,000 from our savings?" My voice was low but sharp. "I didn't take it. I loaned it," he said, like the word could make it better. "Loaned it to who?" My blood ran cold. He hesitated, pacing slightly, reaching for a water bottle. "Vanessa." I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound that surprised me. "You gave your ex-girlfriend $10,000 of our money without asking me?" "She needed help. She was about to be evicted. I couldn't say no," he said, his voice defensive. "It's our money," I spat, my fingers trembling over the keyboard. "Not just yours." "It's a loan. She'll pay it back." "When?" I demanded. "Do you have it in writing, a contract?" He shook his head. "No, I trust her. You trust your ex-girlfriend with $10,000 of our savings? My voice broke, echoing in the apartment. He tried to meet my eyes, but I wasn't looking. I needed space. I grabbed my coat. I'm going to my brother Ethan's tonight. I need time to think. He opened his mouth, but I didn't wait. I walked out. The door closed behind me, and with it, the illusion of safety I had built around our life. I spent the night at my brother Ethan's apartment, lying on his guest bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the past 48 hours. The rain pattered against the window, a relentless rhythm that matched the pounding in my chest. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Daniel's face, smiling, calm, casual, the face of someone I thought I knew, and yet somehow I didn't. By morning, I knew I couldn't sit idle. I needed answers. I needed clarity. And maybe, just maybe, I needed to protect myself. I called Daniel before work. His voice was bright, too bright, masking something I could feel under the surface. I need to talk, I said, face to face. He hesitated. I'm busy at work. Can't this wait? No, it can't, I said firmly. Meet me after your shift. That evening, he arrived at the apartment, carrying his laptop bag and a nervous energy I hadn't seen before. I was sitting at the kitchen table, the screen of my phone open with the bank account in view. Lillian, he started, but I cut him off. Explain this, I said, gesturing toward the missing 10,000. He ran a hand through his hair. I loaned it to Vanessa. She really needed it. I laughed bitterly, the sound echoing in the apartment like a shard of glass. Loaned it? $10,000 is a loan from our joint savings? You didn't ask me. You didn't even mention it beforehand. I was trying to help, he said, defensive now, eyes darting. She was going through a really tough time. I couldn't just leave her to deal with it alone. And what about us? I asked, my voice shaking. Our plans, our future, our home fund? That's just collateral for your ex-girlfriend's problems? It's temporary, he said. She'll pay it back. Trust me. I stared at him, disbelief and anger clashing in a storm inside me. Trust her? You trust your ex-girlfriend with our money? Did you even think about how this affects us? He paused, swallowing. I knew you'd be upset. That's why I didn't tell you. Upset? Daniel, you're telling me after the fact that you gave $10,000 away without asking me. This isn't just upset, this is betrayal. He opened his mouth, then closed it. We sat in silence, the tension in the room almost palpable, each of us trapped in our own storm of emotions. I could feel the heat of anger rising, clawing its way up my throat. Why meet her in secret? Why not just email her or call? I asked, leaning forward. Why all the secret coffee dates, the texts, the smiles at your phone? Daniel, tell me the truth. It's complicated, he said, voice low. She's my friend, that's all. Friends don't drain our joint savings, Daniel, I said, my hands trembling. Friends don't hide meetings and messages from their partners. Friends don't make you choose between loyalty to them and loyalty to your relationship. He flinched, but didn't respond. His silence was deafening. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I need time. I need space to think. I'm going to Ethan's tonight. He tried to protest. Lillian, please! No, I said firmly. This isn't a conversation anymore. It's a boundary. I packed a small bag, grabbed my coat, and left. The door closed behind me, and for the first time, I felt the weight of reality settling in. The man I loved, the man I trusted, had put his ex-girlfriend ahead of me and our shared life. At Ethan's apartment, I sat in the dim light of the living room, replaying our conversations, our texts, the subtle changes in his behavior I'd ignored, the secretive coffee meetings, the late-night messages, the smiles that didn't include me. Every small sign pointed to the same uncomfortable truth. Daniel had prioritized Vanessa over us. I wasn't ready to confront the full extent of what that meant yet, but I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't ignore it. The next morning, I contacted Patricia, a lawyer Ethan recommended. Straightforward, no nonsense. She listened as I explained the situation. Financial infidelity can actually work in your favor, she said. Even if he technically had access to the funds, secretly transferring money to an ex can be leveraged legally. But you need proof, emails, texts, anything showing the transfer and intent. I swallowed, determination hardening inside me. I had the bank records, the texts. That would require access to Daniel's devices. I hesitated, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized if I didn't act, I'd be complicit in my own betrayal. After work, I returned to our apartment. Daniel was at the office, leaving the space eerily quiet. I hesitated at the door, fingers hovering over the laptop. We'd shared passwords, a trust thing I had never questioned before. 10 seconds later, my resolve took over. I typed in his password. The screen lit up. Emails, messages, and documents awaited, innocuous at first glance. Then I found them. Messages between Daniel and Vanessa. Weeks' worth of planning and reassurance. The tone was intimate, caring, protective. Nothing overtly romantic yet, but clearly she was the priority. She was the one he would go out of his way to help, even if it meant betraying me. I screenshotted everything, sending it to myself. Each line, each message was a confirmation of the hidden truth I had feared. By the time I left the apartment, my hands were shaking, my mind racing. This wasn't just about money. This was about trust, about love, about betrayal in its rawest, most personal form. And I knew this was only the beginning. The night at Ethan's apartment was long and restless. I lay on the guest bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind spinning with questions I didn't want to ask but couldn't ignore. The soft hum of the city outside felt distant, irrelevant, as if the world had moved on while my life quietly fractured. By morning, I knew what I had to do. This wasn't just about money. It was about trust, respect, and betrayal. If I didn't understand the full extent of what Daniel had done, I would be powerless to protect myself. I called Patricia, the lawyer, and explained everything again, detailing the transfer, the secret meetings, the evasive answers. Financial infidelity is serious, Patricia said. Even if Daniel technically had access to the account, the way he used it, without your knowledge, to prioritize an ex, can be leveraged in your favor legally. But you need evidence, texts, emails, anything linking him to this transfer and showing he kept it secret. I had the bank records. Now I needed the communications. That meant going into his laptop. I hesitated. This was private territory, but the betrayal had already crossed boundaries I couldn't ignore. I steeled myself, drove back to the apartment, and entered with quiet determination. The apartment smelled faintly of his cologne, a reminder of the life I was questioning. His laptop sat on the kitchen table, dormant. I powered it on, fingers trembling slightly. The password was shared. Another token of trust, now turned necessary tool in uncovering the truth. Emails first. Messages flooded the screen. Innocuous greetings, casual check-ins. But then I found the thread that made my stomach knot. Week after week, Daniel and Vanessa had been communicating in ways that were intimate, protective, even emotionally charged. Daniel, I don't know what I'd do without you. You've always been the one person I could rely on. Even after we ended, I never stopped caring. You're my friend, always. I'd do anything to help. And then the messages regarding the money. If I could get $10,000, I could pay off back rent and manage until I find a new job. Consider it done. I'll transfer it this weekend. Thank you. You're an angel. Of course. That's what friends do. Friends don't do this. Friends don't make your partner choose between them and the relationship. Friends don't earn secret admiration and priority over a shared life. The more I scrolled, the more the subtle hints of emotional infidelity emerged. Late-night texts asking about availability, casual, can we meet up? Messages disguised as networking or friendly support. The tone was protective, intimate, carefully maintained to avoid detection, but the emotional intimacy was unmistakable. Every screenshot I took was a confirmation of what I already feared. Daniel had built a hidden life in plain sight, placing Vanessa above me in ways both financial and emotional. By the time I left the apartment, the weight was almost unbearable. The betrayal wasn't just about the $10,000. It was the prioritization, the secrecy, the disregard for our shared life. It was an emotional wedge driven between us, calculated or not, and it had worked. At Ethan's, I replayed each conversation in my mind, dissected each memory, each moment that now seemed like subtle signals I had ignored. The secret smiles at his phone, the pretext of helping a friend, the way he became tense whenever I asked a question. They were all pieces of the puzzle, now painfully clear. Patricia called that afternoon. "This is good," she said. "You have a clear pattern, secret communications, the money transfer, prioritizing his ex. If you decide to take legal action, this will strengthen your case. You're not overreacting. You're responding to deliberate choices he made." Her words gave me clarity, but not peace. I wasn't ready to act fully yet. I had to decide on the right course, but the path was becoming clearer. If Daniel wanted to continue his duplicity, he would have to face the consequences. I sat in Ethan's living room, the city skyline dimming in the early evening, and felt a resolve harden inside me. The betrayal had been exposed, the truth in my hands. I had the power now, not revenge, not yet, but control over the next steps. Control over my life, my decisions, and my boundaries. This was the turning point. I wasn't just uncovering evidence, I was reclaiming my agency, and when the moment came, Daniel would no longer dictate the terms of our shared future. The storm of anger, hurt, and disbelief still raged inside me, but underneath it all, a quiet clarity began to form. I would act. I would protect myself. I would ensure that the choices he made at my expense would no longer threaten my life, my security, or my peace. And I knew what I would do next would change everything. The next morning, I woke with a sense of grim determination. Daniel had chosen, knowingly or not, to put Vanessa above our life together. I couldn't undo the betrayal, but I could control how it affected me going forward. I called Patricia, the lawyer, and outlined the steps I wanted to take. I want to secure my assets, protect my home, and hold him accountable for what he's done, I said, my voice steady. Patricia nodded. Since the house is in your name, changing the locks is legal. You can remove him from financial access as well. Just document everything, texts, emails, bank records. You'll need it if he disputes anything. By late morning, I was back at the apartment. The locksmith arrived quietly, and within an hour, the locks were changed. Front door, back door, garage, every access point secured. I kept one set, gave a spare to Ethan for safekeeping. Then I began packing. Daniel's clothes, toiletries, personal items, all neatly boxed and stacked in the garage. On a piece of paper, I wrote a note, sharp and clear. Daniel, I know everything. The emails, the texts, the money transfer. You chose her over us. The locks are changed. Your things are in the garage. You're free to take them any time. Don't contact me unless it's through a lawyer. I left the apartment and drove to Ethan's. For the first time in days, I felt a sense of release. Not peace, not yet, but a step toward it. The power had shifted back to me. That evening, my phone exploded with notifications. Missed calls, texts, messages from Daniel. What did you do? One read. You can't do this. Another. I ignored them. I had no obligation to answer. For weeks, he had ignored boundaries, ignored transparency, and put someone else first. Now, it was my turn to set the terms. 2 days later, I forwarded the screenshots of emails and texts to Patricia. She reviewed them carefully. This is clear evidence of ongoing secrecy, emotional prioritization of an ex, and unauthorized financial action. You're in a very strong position. I didn't respond immediately. I needed distance, time to process. The house was mine, the locks were mine, and for the first time, I could breathe without the weight of Daniel's betrayal pressing down on me. By the end of the week, Daniel tried every avenue, emails, calls through friends, even contacting my mother, who reminded him that he had broken the trust he once had. Each attempt was ignored. Each attempt reinforced the boundary I had drawn. A week later, I received an unexpected email from Vanessa. Her tone was apologetic, almost defensive. She claimed she hadn't known Daniel was compromising our shared life, and that she intended to pay back the money. I didn't respond. This was between Daniel and me. Her presence was irrelevant to the resolution I was crafting. Daniel's excuses, attempts, and manipulations no longer held sway over my emotions. I had acted decisively, taken back control, and refused to be complicit in his secret life any longer. In the weeks that followed, I refinanced the house to remove Daniel's access completely. The joint savings account was settled, Daniel's loan effectively nullified by the actions I had taken. Slowly, life began to normalize. I started reconnecting with friends I had neglected during the storm, spending time with Ethan, and even taking small steps to rediscover joy in my own life. I went on dates cautiously, aware of my own boundaries and the lessons learned. Lillian Nelson, the nurse who had trusted and been betrayed, had emerged stronger. I had reclaimed my home, my finances, and my emotional boundaries. Daniel had made his choice, prioritizing Vanessa over our life together. I had made mine, choosing self-respect, clarity, and freedom. The house was quiet, secure, and mine. The betrayal had been exposed, and with that exposure came power. Not revenge, not malice, just clarity, control, and the ability to move forward on my own terms. And for the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. Weeks had passed since I changed the locks. The apartment, once heavy with tension and secrets, felt peaceful again. Quiet, calm, and mine. Daniel's attempts to reach me had stopped, blocked by both distance and my resolve. The divorce process moved faster than I anticipated. With the house in my name, the evidence of the financial transfer, and the pattern of secrecy documented, the settlement was straightforward. The joint account was divided, half for me, half for him, though most of what he received had already gone to Vanessa. It was justice, practical and uncompromising, and it felt right. I spent the first morning after the finalization sitting by the kitchen window, sipping coffee and feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. The betrayal still stung, but the fear and uncertainty were gone. For the first time in months, I could breathe without the constant gnawing anxiety of wondering what Daniel was hiding, who he prioritized, and why I had been left in the dark. Rebuilding life wasn't just about possessions. It was about reclaiming confidence, trust in myself, and a sense of stability. I reconnected with friends I had neglected, laughed more freely, and even allowed myself to explore romantic possibilities again. One evening, I met Ryan, a thoughtful, grounded man I met at a work seminar. He wasn't flashy, he didn't overpromise, but he listened. He understood boundaries and respected my pace. We spent hours talking about our pasts, our challenges, and even laughed about dating misadventures. For the first time in a long time, I felt seen and safe. Lillian Nelson, nurse, survivor, woman who had been betrayed, was stepping into a new chapter. The lessons of the past were clear. Trust must be earned, boundaries must be respected, and self-worth cannot be compromised. As for Daniel, his choices had consequences. He had prioritized his ex over a committed relationship, and that decision had defined the end of our story. I didn't follow the path of revenge, because the most powerful act was reclaiming my life, my home, and my autonomy. Some nights I caught myself reflecting on what had happened. The secret coffee meetings, the late-night texts, the $10,000 transfer, and instead of anger, I felt clarity. I knew exactly who I was, what I valued, and what I would never tolerate again. I moved forward with intention. I decorated the apartment the way I wanted. I focused on work, friendships, and self-growth. Every step, small or large, was a reminder that I had survived betrayal and had the strength to thrive beyond it. Life wasn't perfect. It never would be. But it was authentic, honest, and mine. And for Lillian Nelson, that was more than enough. I was free.